Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Matt Wareham, Director at Depictar. We will discuss unveiling the role of video marketing to skyrocketing your business growth. I know video has been around for a while, but hopefully you get to learn something new today. So let's drop in. Matt, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey Dots, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. As you probably learn with most podcasts, and I'm hoping to turn this on its head later, but of course, we got to start by talking about you, the person, your career, your background. People want to know, those who don't know you already. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've been making video and audio content professionally for about 15 years now. I worked at a large broadcaster for a really long time and I was making documentaries there. So did all sorts, health, military, drugs policy, really broad brief, but it was really fun. But the thing that tied all of those bits together was that it was all for young people, sort of 16 to 25-year-olds broadly. And that was a really good foundation actually, because young people tend to be ahead of the curve. So I was making short form digital content initially to support these like longer pieces, but then also eventually as content in its own right. And we were using techniques from short form videos that we'd seen on YouTube and social media. And I suppose the one thing as well was we were hyper aware of attention spans being short. So so that sort of led me, I suppose, after being there for a while, it led me to want to make the leap and leave that job and to take the skills that I learned doing that for a broadcaster. And, basically my skill was trying to make content that engages people who are hard to engage. And then I decided to start Depictar and not look back from there really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's consumption rate, retention, those KPIs. Yeah, I guess from a podcasting career perspective on my side, yeah, that's probably the next challenge for people. And it's maybe the solution is not far out there, but hopefully we might get a glimpse of that as we go on into the topic here. But let's go on to the positive side a little bit. Um, why would you think people love videos so much? The video format, especially those kinds of videos that drive some sort of a brand action or, good enough, drive commercial impact. Or what have you ever had to think about that? Maybe you are in the restroom or on the bed having your private moments.
Um, I mean, for me, I think it's really simple actually. I think it's it's the best way of communicating with someone without speaking to them face to face. And, for example, with us right now, we've chatted a bit on LinkedIn, but this is the first time that we're speaking face to face. And I feel like I know Dots way better now than I did when I only had spoken to you via message. So, know, realistically, for most people or most companies, you can't speak to everyone who visits your LinkedIn page or website. I mean, if you can speak to everyone who visits your website, you probably need more website visitors, right? So you're not going to be able to have a face-to-face interaction with every single person that comes across you online. But also, nothing else lets you see and hear someone. So if someone sees a video of you, they'll feel like they know you a little bit, at least a little bit. And so by the time that they do have the interaction with you, they're warmed up. They know you. So they, you know, also the other thing is you get to control the narrative with a video in the same way that you do with an audio product as well, to be fair. But, you know, if you think people are going to your website and reading 750 words from the start to the end in order that you've chosen, that's just not, it's not the case. But with a video, people will start watching it. They might not get to the end. Let's be realistic. Same as with a podcast, they might not get to the end, but they will start and they will get the information in the order that you think is most important. So you can control the narrative. And also, people are warmed to you and they want to make a call, then that's great. But also, if they watch you and they decide they don't, if they watch a video of me and they decide they don't like me for whatever reason, it's actually in my interest that they decide not to book a call with me, because by the time we got on a call, they would just decide they didn't like me anyway. So it saves a bit of time. So for me, I think really it just comes down to it's the most authentic way of communicating without being face to face with someone. And you can't be face to face with everybody that you'd like to engage with in a professional way.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, for someone like me, I did something yesterday. I had to read a book, and you guys can check the book out. It's called Resonate. It's like a communication presentation book. And I went in there for 4 hours. The last time I did that was when I was about to get married, when I was reading about personality types. That was almost 10 years ago. That was a pain, to go through. And that's because I'm more of the interactive media guy now. I always joke about the fact that I've got two types of YouTube subscriptions, the YouTube Music and the YouTube Premium, because I'm just like addicted to YouTube like that. Always on there, 15 hours a day at some point. Audiobooks is now like my best friend. I read a book every 2 weeks with copious concentration and notes, just by hearing what is being said. So it, there's that shift, right? People are getting busier, right? I mean, there's AI, but people are still getting busier. I guess people are getting busier being lazy or playing or doing other family things. But we're getting busier in general. That's really the thing. And you're right, am I going to read a text article with as much intensity? Maybe skim and scan, right? Maybe because, I'm reading something in my niche. I might have an idea of what people might want to write. Maybe my eye catches something new. But other than that, the potential of engagement or that personal communication using the video route or the video medium is key. Now, let's say I'm convinced about why video is important, if I'm not living under the rock. Um, the storytelling part is also key. So when you were speaking about your background, then you sort of grew your career. If I were to summarize your career in one statement, for example, mine is connecting the dots for businesses, but yours could be, fostering better interactions or something like that, because you were moving companies to create more engaging content. So storytelling is obviously very, very key. So from your perspective, and I know this could be a very common question, tell us the impact of storytelling, when you're creating these brand videos that you want potential customers to watch.
So first of all, I'm totally with you on the audiobooks. I got to say that first, that I like a book, but I was just struggling to get through it. And then audiobooks changed my life in that respect. But and I suppose it leads on to storytelling, doesn't it? If we like a good story in a book. But yeah, when it comes to storytelling in video, I think, my favorite method is to keep things really simple most of the time. And I have a 3-step sort of process which we put most things through in the first round. Sometimes we don't. Depends on the genre of the video, right? There's different things you could be doing, but generally speaking, if we're talking about branded content video, we're looking at these 3 steps. We're looking at a really strong hook at the start. We're looking at a story that creates empathy in the middle, and we're looking at a call to action at the end. And obviously that middle bit is a bit vague. I'll go into a bit more detail in a sec, but um, the hook is where you need to be focusing a lot of your effort. Often do that at the end if you are scripting it, or if you're depends how what the production process for the video is like. But often that's the thing you want to come to last, because you really, really want to make sure that this is the best possible 1.5 or 2 seconds. When I first started doing digital content, we were told you've got 7 seconds to engage people at the start of a video. And that is, and at the time, everyone thought, whoa, that's hardly any time at all. Now, if someone said you've got 7 seconds at the start of a TikTok, you think that's a luxury, right? So, within 1.5 to 2 seconds, whether you're just going to swipe up onto the next thing or not. Um, so you need to make that hook count. And, sort of things that tend to work well for that are starting with a shocking statistic, starting with an intriguing question is actually probably my favorite way of doing that. Start with some sort of intriguing question, or go for something emotional, but really think about what you can do that makes you, that will make people want to watch. All you're trying to do with this hook is get people to watch the next bit of the video. Now, that means making something that they really, really makes them intrigued enough to go on to the next thing. But you don't want to lie to them. You don't want to missell it. You don't want to make it sound like it's something that's not. But, that's probably most of the effort needs to go into the first 2 seconds, because if they don't watch that, they're not watching any of the rest of it. So there's no point making it, in a sense. Um, but once you've got past that, once we're into the middle, this bit about building empathy in the middle, tell a story. People generally don't like being sold to, but a story that shows how people feel after they've bought your product or service or used it is so much more enticing. And And actually, I go one step further to say one story generally is better than lots of fragments. You know, one
Mm,
story of
that's
how,
an interesting one.
yeah, so one story where Dots has had a real transformation because of using this product or service. Um, that's more like I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm just like Dots. I want to do the same. But if there's 15 different clips of someone saying it's amazing and sort of throwaway comments, that's not going to land nearly so well. Um, so I'd say one really relatable person will usually be preferable. Um, the sort of no nos for me is when you get into features, technical stuff, listing all the technical features and why this is better. And, one of the things I see over and over again is people doing that and they're like, oh, but it's business to business. So in which case, and it's like the person watching it is still a person, right? So don't use the fact that it's business to business to say it can be a bit rubbish,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's still a
Yeah, you
person.
do have a lot of work to do in that space, by the way. But yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
mentioning.
But it's you see this as well, I'm sure, that people say, oh, it's business to business, so I can afford to be boring. And actually, it doesn't mean your client's still a person and they don't. I say on that point as well, the other stuff to just leave out is really sort of throwaway comments which add no value, like saying you're excellent quality or we give really personal customer service. Like leave it out. Like nobody's ever said, oh, our customer service is a bit ropey and the qualities can be hit or miss, right? Um, so don't bother saying it because it doesn't have any ability to say those sort of things. Um, so yeah, I'd focus on story, really focus on, getting one good story that's told well and as short as you can tell that story well. Before you move on to the end, which is the call to action. And you need a call to action, really. I mean, sometimes actually we've experimented with putting the call to action in the middle of a video to try and increase the number of people who might see it because, the, but we'd often normally still put it at the end. The sort of main thing for that is the smaller the ask, the more likely it is that people will do it. You do need one in the sense that if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you make a really lovely piece of content but don't tell people what you want them to do next, they probably won't do anything. They'll just go, "Oh, that was lovely," and move on. Yeah, but they won't do anything else. Um, if you say we did a story about, Dots is our case study, and he's told me about how he's had this huge extension put on his house and it's transformed his family life. And then at the end, it says, click here to, pay using PayPal $30,000 for an extension just like it. Like nobody's going to do that. Okay, that's a wild one. But if it's a low value product, you might get some sales. You can legitimately ask for sales straight away. But if it's something that's free, that is more likely. And obviously, you've got your classic YouTuber lines of follow, slide, subscribe, like. But then also think about, can you ask people, instead of asking for a sale, can you ask them to join a wait list for when you release a product? Or you know, that's going to give you a higher chance that they actually do it, but also give you more touch points with them before you ask for the sale. Equally, if you've got a lead magnet or something like that that you can forward them to, that's a good way of doing it. Essentially, you know, ask for a small thing with the chance of getting more people to do it. And that's probably what most people want from this sort of content. Unless you really, really do need them to book a call. But that's quite a big ask saying book a call straight off the bat. So I'd say, just be conscious of what you're asking and ask yourself if you saw that on someone else's video when you didn't know the company, would you do
Oh
it?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just be self-aware in that sense.
Yeah, very, very instructive. I like, you know, take Apple for example. The reason why they really hone in on stories, maybe they've got a few call to actions, but not too much, is because, of course, their products are very expensive, right? So that just makes a lot of sense. The aspect of that one story arc is great. It's very difficult, Matt, because got all these product lines. You want to tell everything in 1 minute. What do you do? So um basically it's key because you are centering this story about the hero. And we had also from the UK, Andrew Davis, on the pod, and he mentioned something like that, making sure you are creating your potential customer as the hero of the story and having him achieve, there's that there's the contrast of problem and solution and problem and solution, but the overall progression is very high. Um, 2 seconds, absolutely. Now, if you're on the YouTube app, you have the chance to see a video for a little while. I think it's 5 seconds or something like that before you even play it. So whatever people see there without the audio is very, very important. And that's where my next question falls in. You're probably aware, especially on the YouTube space, I've got another YouTube channel aside from in the YouTube version of this podcast. So I have a bit of an experience in the YouTube space whereby there's a lot of, oh, Mr. Beast did his thumbnails this way. So let me do it the same thing to get people to click. So many times I don't watch videos, not just because the content is great, but because the person has deliberately titled it in such a way or used what's it called? Thumbnail in such a way that is outright clickbait. Maybe it's the marketer in me, but some of those things are allowed. Some of them are just, way too much. So how do you do all these great tips that you have mentioned in a way that it's not about, oh, I want to get likes, I want to get comments, I want to get views. You're just focusing on that KPI or that metric rather than focusing on the overall viewing experience of your potential customer.
Yeah, I think you need to be authentic to whatever your audience is expecting from you, and that will vary business to business, right? So, you know, the type of content that people expect from a financial advisor will be different to what they expect from someone who's their barber. You know, that and that's legitimately fine, but it needs you there isn't a one size fits all approach for like this. And I think that's sometimes where people go wrong with that, like copying, oh, I'm going to copy Mr. Beast. And I'm a mortgage advisor. It's like, well, it's first of all, you're not Mr. Beast. And second of all, it doesn't really fit. It's just something that's popular that you've jumped on. I'm glad you asked the question about, the metrics, because the views metric will always haunt people, because that's the easiest thing for someone to look at, isn't it? It's the easiest way to try and gauge whether something has been a success. It's also what people are used to within the sort of video space when they're looking at things like TV advertising, radio advertising. It's all about viewers and listeners. So um, that's what people have been used to paying for. Um, but usually plain views is just not a great metric. I've made videos that have got over 1 million views on Instagram. Take for me, it's not going to solve your problems. Um, Equally, I have a client who has a podcast that gets fairly no number of listens. Like, we're talking a couple of hundred listens a month, but all of those are ideal clients because they send the link to an email list full of their ideal clients. And it's very specific, that podcast. They've made a podcast because, in the same way of the audiobook example that you talked about earlier, right? They were sending out this really lengthy PDF once a month. And probably 0% of people were actually reading it. They now make a 15-minute podcast once a month and they get a couple of hundred listens on that, which for them is way better. So they don't care, and they don't care about it, becoming something that gets 200,000 downloads over. They really don't care about that. So for that, and that sort of brings us on to, it's about making sure that it gets to the right people. And there are different ways that you can use video a bit more creatively, I suppose, to come up with ideas that might help. So one that I really like is a sort of pre-qualification video. So when someone books a call with you, as part of the email they get sent, which says, "Thank you for booking a call. Thank you. And, we look forward to speaking. Here's a little video explaining what it is we do. And I'd love you to watch this first so that you're sort of up to speed." And that's your opportunity to say, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is who I help. And this is who I don't help. And this is what I don't do. So we go back to that little financial advisor example.
Oh yeah,
And
very
this
good
is,
example, by the way. They are
well,
relentless.
yeah. And so if you have a video on there, if you're the financial advisor and you say, I help couples or families who earn more than $130,000 a year, who are looking to plan for their future so they can keep going on nice holidays and maintain their standard of living, keep living in that house after retirement, then that's really specific. And then you say, look, if you don't earn that amount of money, I don't help you. Then that means if someone's booked a call with you and they earn $40,000 a year, they watch the video and they think that's not for me. They cancel the call. You don't waste your time on them. But what it also does is it draws the target audience closer because it feels like you're speaking directly to them. You know, this is you. This is, you know, this is what I do. I help people exactly like you. So pre-qualification videos are really good, especially, and they can be helpful when people have had a sort of successful campaign elsewhere, which means they're getting a lot of requests in, but those requests are not especially well targeted. You know, you're getting a huge number of people ring you or ask for a Zoom call or whatever, but they're people who not all are a very good fit. The other thing I think works really well is making content that's specifically for keeping existing customers engaged because
I
it
love
really,
that because we rarely talk to our existing customers. But go on.
yeah, so easy for you to do a sale, do the work, forget about the client for a bit. Um, Now, sometimes, depending on your industry, it's a one-off thing and you don't expect repeat business. Sometimes these people are kind of on a retainer. So for example, your accountant or someone, they they're on a they're kind of on a retainer for you, but you don't have much interaction with them on a month by month basis sometimes. I'm certainly not in a sort of proper interaction. So that can be nice. We've tried it once where we got someone, and this is quite repeatable actually. It's quite nice little idea. It does depend on how many customers you've got. If you've got, say, 50 customers, then make a video for, we did it for Christmas for them, but you could do it for any other time that felt relevant to your audience. Basically made a generic video, direct to camera video, similar to, you know, just what we're talking like now. Yeah, thanking them, giving them a little bit of an update, saying some of the things they might want to be aware of for the next year. And they just recorded everybody's name, like 50 names at the top. So we just spliced in at the top, you know, hi Dots, thank you so much for being a customer this year. And then it's into like the main video, right? Just with a sort of punching effect. And you can rattle that off quite quickly. And then that's a nice personal touch that you send to people. Got someone else who's experimenting with videos, which the classic thing to do is to take all of the questions you get asked and make a little video answering those common FAQs and what they've done. So often we would recommend that to people to put it on their website. But what this person's done is taken all of those little videos, and they're all mostly about 30 seconds long, 20 to 40 seconds, let's say, got them in an album on their phone. And then when people interact with them, often it's by ringing their mobile. So they will then just WhatsApp them or iMessage them or whatever, the video answer. So if they've got a question, it's like, do you know what? I've got an answer to that, and I'll send you the little video which answers your question. And it might be a bit of a gimmick, but it does stand out because no one else is really doing that. So that's another sort of little creative way. And look, you could send those answers to only 10 people ever, but if 5 of them buy something from you, that's better than having a million. Because I can give you examples of people, you know, speaking to someone recently at the end of last year. I was speaking to someone whose podcast, the TikTok channel that they've got for promoting their podcast, they got a video that did over 1 million views on TikTok for that. What do you think the impact was on the downloads?
Um, Maybe 1%, I would assume.
Yeah, so small it was, and it literally sort of immeasurably small, and that's because people saw it once, and also there's a problem sometimes with the way, you know, how what space people are in when they see it or whatever. But yeah, it it's much better to do a video that you send to 10 people if 5 of them buy it than it is to get a video that 500,000 people see if none of them buy it.
Yeah. And you know, TikTok is designed to get people to see more than one video, right? So the ability to stay in one video, think about it for a little bit, and then take action to listen to more content is not there. You know, it's really you. I don't know if you've noticed it. If you press close on TikTok, you need to press it like 2 or 3 times before it's gone. So it's all wired in. You know, they want to keep you in there. So I'm being in the podcast marketing space. You would imagine that we've seen all kinds of benchmarks. But the thing that I see that you sort of honing on there before we get into the break is the the conversion rate, relevance, which is key. You know, we have a customer that we do podcast promotion for. All they want is maybe, at least in a market, is maybe 1,000 downloads, at least for now. Now they have the potential to at least triple that based on even their current marketing spend. But they say we'd rather, get less downloads, pay more expensive downloads to a much extremely relevant audience. Like, you can't make this up. It's just extremely targeted than to have this many views and they all rack up. And even though that experience was very challenging, it's almost like you're trying to you propose to a lady that said no the first time and then you go back the second time to try again. But I can say that today now we've made a lot of success with our strategy, um, and it just proves that relevance is absolutely key when it comes to video content in general. So that makes a lot of sense there. I do have one more question for you, and it's probably my most favorite questions. You've teased it a little bit here, but there is no way that video marketing would exist without this channel that I'm about to talk about. But guys, I'm asking you to please share this episode. It helps us a lot. I mean, I'm also the fan of being relevant, so I've got the listener value guarantee. You listen to 3 episodes, none of them is a question that wakes you up at night or something you can strongly relate to, feel free to go to other podcasts. There are many marketing podcasts out there. My goal is to really have this niche segment of people who love, every episode if possible. So please share this one if you enjoy it. Helps us to continue to do more. We put a lot of work into the content itself, what the brief looks like, and things like that. So it really, really helps us out. Now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, it is going to be the Dots rapid fire. I would say we've been having a little bit of fun, instructive fun so far, but this fire is going to be hot. So things will get very tense, but I'm sure Mark is going to be all right. Stay tuned, guys. Guys, welcome back. So like I said, it's the Dots rapid fire. Um, Matt is basically a witness in the virtual marketing court of law right now. He's going to say the truth in 3 questions and nothing but the truth. Are you ready?
Here we go. Okay.
Okay, first one. What is your favorite marketing metric apart from sales or revenue?
Oh, I'd say cost per client, cost per acquiring a new client is because I think that is hard numbers that matter, right? Cost of getting a new client.
Mm, mm. And the race to drive them lower. But I would have thought you would say conversion rate because you sort of adored that metric indirectly so far in this episode.
Mm. Yeah, but I felt like if I said that, that would be too easy, wouldn't it? Now, cost per client's good because that's measurable, and that you need to know it, and then you need to try and well, first of all, try and get it down, but also make sure that as you get bigger, it doesn't spiral, right? That's the
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in some cases, not all cases. So guys, don't misquote me. The increase in conversion rate is directly proportional to the reduction in the cost per acquisition. Um, Again, if it's a big contract or a B2B specialized, that could be a different story. But let's just put it this way, the video marketing world or podcast marketing world, those are some of the things that we are seeing, or advertising words, those are some of the things that we are seeing. Okay, second question. How long do you use social media every day for work?
oh, I try to be strict when it comes to doing it for work. I'm bad at just having a scroll in my own time. But when it comes to using it for work, I reckon I spend probably 20 minutes a day on LinkedIn, split between like a couple of sessions, with the caveat that if we're doing something that's directly related to social, there might be some legitimate work research that goes on. But in terms of like stuff for the company, I try to be quite strict on that because I don't know about you, but I'm quite bad at if I let myself just keep going, keep going, keep going, suddenly the productivity for the day is fallen off a
Of
cliff. So
course, yeah. I honestly, I got a bit of discipline around that, but I think why I spend less time and I'm still struggling with 1 hour, is because sometimes there's just so much on social that it's a bit disgusting. With all due respect, there is so much self-gloating. It works. There is so much cynicism. It works. For those that it works for, you know, be cynic, be a cynist if, or be a critic enough to sell your marketing cost to people or your business cost to people. So there's so much, I guess, online influence or thought leadership. In some ways, it's going well. There are people who are just out there to share. It may be wrong information, but they are still sharing value all the same. But there are some that are just basically trying to, show positive highlights. Let's put it that way. So um, sometimes I try to find content that is relevant to those to the positive side and for those that are just sharing knowledge for knowledge sake. So and you don't get that many of them, unfortunately. So yeah. Okay. Last question. What is your favorite marketing quote?
or I'd say the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing, but I can't remember who said it.
Yeah,
Who said that?
I should know that by now. I know Brian is hearing me, our producer. We've had that quoted maybe 10 times at least.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
good one. That's why I think
yeah,
it's a good. But yeah, I should know who it's
Yeah,
by,
you
but
should
I
know.
don't, I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
well, I mean, it sort of ties into the topic, right? Video marketing. Tom Fishburne of Marketunist. That's right. But I've been I exclaim because we're still trying to chase Tom to be on the spot. That day I'm gonna have a party. So Tom, if you're listening, we have a lot of your fans here. So, well, yeah, it ties to what you said, so far in this podcast. Video marketing and skyrocketing business growth. If you look at it, Matt, everything we've been discussing is almost like an irony, right? You do something that is not supposed to do this result, but because of how human behavior has changed, now it's able to happen, right? You don't sell to enable you to sell. And people can just sometimes fandom, like, is that really possible? Well, it is possible because that's the way human nature works today. Uh, and I will divert a little bit away from business. Sometimes you have to be humble to rule the world. It doesn't make sense. So it's the same thing with being engaged on the video platform. Okay. So the last question, is the podcasting trend, right? It's awesome. I love it. I might be making a lot of statements on this podcast across episodes that are very biased towards the podcasting space, but for those who know, they agree with me that it's very very effective. Uh, Especially when you even use video, and now YouTube is trying to do everything to get into the space. Other audio platforms are having video formats now. I think that's where the new confusion is. So what do we do? What do we upload first? And things like that. But another topic for another day. My point is really, really fun. And let's take the TikTok on success. Uh, for example, the one that you mentioned in terms of 1 million views and less than 1% of downloads. What are some of the recommendations on how to leverage video market, to drive engagement for your podcast? Um, what are some of those things that we could try to do?
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest pain point for podcasts, especially when they're new, is generally you're starting from absolute zero, and it's discoverability, isn't it? Now, to go to the TikTok sort of example that I mentioned earlier, and to pick up on that, I think there were a couple of things which probably play into the large number of views and not converting into more people coming to your podcast. That is, this is, to get to that number of views, this is something that's basically gone viral. People are seeing one clip. The clip has, whether it was engineered to potentially try and go viral or to maximize its sort of watch time amongst new people, or whether it happened by accident, um, people will probably see this once. Now, will they attribute it to the person it came from? Probably not. The biggest issue with with that sort of direct conversion on TikTok is, like you said earlier, TikTok is specifically designed to keep you on their platform watching loads and loads and loads and loads of short videos. Now, you never open TikTok and think I'm going to spend an hour watching. It's not like you open Netflix. You don't open TikTok thinking I'm going to watch a masterpiece that's an hour long, but you might spend an hour watching loads of things that are about a minute. And that's fairly easy to do when you're on their platform. So, what you're asking, if you're saying to someone, watch this one clip and then subscribe to my podcast or go and listen to this podcast episode that this clip's from, is you're trying to take them out of that fast scrolling short content, and then you're saying you're visually watching this visually stimulating thing on your phone for say 40 seconds to a minute and a half. Now I want you to stop watching anything and listen to something that might take 40 minutes out of your day, and that's quite an interrupt for people. But that's not to say that TikTok isn't really valuable when it comes to this. I think it's the focus is more about creating a community or an account that feels like a community of people who will engage with the content. So you need to find people who are genuinely interested in the topic. So it also depends on what do you actually want, because this varies from podcast to podcast, right? Do you want the audio downloads to your podcast as the only measure of the success for it? Or does the fact that people have seen clips and taken some value from short segments of your podcast please you enough? Does the fact that, you're getting a reach to people and they're consuming your content in this way, is that good enough for you? Or do they need to listen to the full episode? Obviously, you probably like everyone to listen to the full episode, but not everybody requires that. They're happy with the clips doing well. But yeah, so if you've got a podcast, obviously it's a great starting point for cutting lots of short form content. But what you then need to do is try and get people to subscribe, and then you're using this as a way to broaden your reach so that more people know about you. And realistically, they're probably not going to subscribe to your podcast until they've seen several of these short clips, because you see so many clips from podcasts on social media these days. It's relatively forgettable on the first watch. If you don't know who the people are, the set looks really generic. It's another one that's been recorded on Riverside, like whatever it is, it can look quite samey, and people will just take, their sort of default on TikTok is to take the content they've got, take it at face value, and then move on. If you can persuade them to subscribe to your channel rather than telling them to get off the platform and subscribe to your podcast, then that could be a good step in trying to build more of a community. And then you're using the short form video in two ways. You are using it still for discoverability so that more new people know about it. You're also using it to shout about the fact that you've got a new episode every time you've got a new episode so that people remember to go and check it out. And, that's the way that I would, and that's actually not just TikTok. This is the same basic tactics that I'd use on Instagram. It's also the same broadly as I would suggest you use on LinkedIn or Facebook if you're doing it on there as well, is try and make it so that people are consuming your content and they're using it more as a notification that there's a new piece of content that exists. So they want to go and listen to the full episode, but it's unrealistic to think that people will watch one clip of your podcast because it's gone viral and then come off the platform and listen or subscribe to it. You really need to make people care about you, especially if the podcast is, if it does depend on the form of the podcast, and obviously, a podcast can be pretty much anything. But if you've either an interview format podcast or a small group, same 3 people every week, then those ones really lend themselves to multiple clips, meaning that people go, oh, actually, do you know what? This could be for me, rather than just being, oh, that was an interesting soundbite.
Makes sense. And so the key there, which is of course valid, is audience transfer. Being able to have that audience transfer from whatever traffic channel it is to your podcast. You're hooked by form of a notification or subscription, so you just binging all the way. What I also see that is important in what you said is that you need to do the audience transfer in a way where the place you are taking them from, it's not as it's almost online. Yeah, so it helps to minimize the friction. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm trying to use like I'm trying to use like how do I put it? I'm trying to use a real life analogy here. So basically, um, maybe it's easier for say a Bachelor of Science degree holder to get a master's because they are sort of in that zone. But if you've got like a very successful person, but all he's got is a college education, and that person wants to get like a master's degree straight, if anything like that is possible, then there will be a bit of a friction there because you are going from, I learned by doing to now I need to get into the core academy or academics. So, um, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. In our space, we've seen platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn, because there's so much dedication on those channels for people. Maybe X in some cases. There's so much, people who are able to look at longer form content differently sometimes. Because of course on LinkedIn there's things like live stream. Uh, on X, for example, there are things like some form of streams as well. Display ads across websites and apps. There are also some of the other things that could be looked at too, because of course you're in the middle of reading an article about a certain topic. Because of what we've said, you feel this article is a bit laborious. So why not go for a short form version and then you see similar content about the same topic, and then you can click into that to consume. So that I think that's a very, very important point. If you're on the pod and you're trying to choose what traffic channel am I using to drive my podcast, especially on the interactive front. So I'm saying audio ads, or video marketing or audio marketing. Whether you are cutting clips or not, I don't care. I think being on that right platform is key. And I know that we are using TikTok as a scapegoat here, but um, I do a lot of TikTok, like advertising and marketing, or quite a bit. And it's effective in some aspects, not in some. So again, there's also that content or channel to market fit, which is beyond the scope of this episode. The episode of which is ending right now. So Matt, thank you so much for sharing all this great wisdom. Again, the word I used before, instructive. So if you're listening or watching, hopefully you're feeling the same. Where can people follow you to learn more?
Yeah, so I'd love to connect with anybody who's an audience of this podcast. So drop me a message on LinkedIn. If you stick a note in there saying that you heard me chat with Dots, then I'll definitely accept you. So yeah, my name, Matt Wareham, is how you can find me. And you can check out the company as well, Depictar, with depictar.co.uk or co.uk for international people. But yeah, would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the best platform to have a sort of genuine conversation with people.
Absolutely. Guys, so that's it on the episode. Like I said, if you want to follow me to get more of this, it's at dotslovesmarketing.com. You can also subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Till next time, guys, connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Listen Network. There will be links to resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.